good morning, guys.
Fighter escorts pursuing enemy fighters, the B-17 and target practice, and precision bombing tactics against military targets gave way to area bombs. That was a euphemistic term.
Did I tell you that my uncle Frank,
How was that, Dave?
he ran a
Yeah, the only thing is we're gonna have to unmute that when we go to record.
World War II started.
If I leave both the mics on, there might be a little bit. Actually, no, it probably won't.
You don't think it's gonna pick up some background?
Let's try
They said he couldn't.
these lavaliers, you can hear people in the back of the room.
A manager, I don't know if he managed.
Make sure everybody's got their cell phone out.
That built on North bomb sites. Oh, yeah.
Okay, so he's left that on. We're hoping it just doesn't pick up. It should be okay.
Really wanted to serve.
I think it's fine.
We have a handheld, because I just have a few things to say before I play my video, so.
Oh, okay, so you're not gonna use this at all? Okay, all right. Then I'll just hand this over to you when I'm done. Okay, all right.
Do you need the chair?
No.
I mean, my mom always told me he was involved with some war work, but it wasn't until I talked to his son, not all that long ago.
But he shows up at 10 minutes too.
Yeah, just somebody. Good morning. Those clients. And unfortunately, even if they were, oh, good morning. Let me move my foot there. I think that's good. And then, so he, running the garage or something. Oh, yeah. And women, even if they were capable, probably had experience at that time, even if actually capable. They just didn't have yeah, certainly,
John, how are you?
oh, really? Oh, quite a bit. Certainly. Yeah, the debate goes back and forth between. You know, which one works better. Which one serves that.
Two. Otherwise I might run out of dollars.
How's that? B-24 was just a high altitude bomber. But to go further, carry more. Which is why they
I'm not very clear.
Another guy looking for more yoga. Part of the plane. Good morning, folks. We're going to get started in about 5 minutes. So if anybody needs to use the restroom, grab another donut, coffee, or whatever, go for it.
Y'all gonna laugh. When you had the presentation of the quilts for Valor, maybe somebody else. I have a friend who used to live here in Wilton, North Carolina. I knew she was a quilt maker, so I texted her and told her about that. She says, "Oh, I know. I make quilts for that organization." It's you. It is. Yeah. I know. I'm gonna look into making the donations. And I think it's great. Yes. Yeah.
Good morning.
My dad is. That you don't have something. Or. I know Al.
I'm Joe.
Hi, Joe. Nice to meet you as well.
Sometimes and sometimes that's good.
One wouldn't please you.
That's fine. No, we don't.
Good morning. Great, thanks for joining us.
Yeah. No one ever knew what
Yes.
What's funny was
And I was just
I've got stuff that I've got to do necessary first.
We're going to get started.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's always nice to get better. When I was there, the wife came down, she takes care of their grandkids. In case she takes care of their grandkids.
Son and I were hitting all the way. Something probably a child. Oh, really? Now, put me in the funny thing is, my son is
63, and he said, "Well, what do you have to do?" He says, "I guess I don't want to go." I'm like, "You're too young to be that kind of thing." That's one of the nice things. It's one of the sports that I do for quite some time. Keeps you active. Yeah. Oh, I know that. His mother was his receptionist.
All righty, folks. Good morning. How's everybody doing? All right. Welcome to the Broomfield Veterans Museum, and of course, welcome to our Coffee and Conversation program. Today, we got a very special guest, Fred Martin. I think quite a few of you know Fred, and we'll introduce him here in just a minute. Unfortunately, we have quite a few announcements, but we'll try and get those out of the way as quickly as possible so we can get to Fred. Couple of things to let you guys know about. Once again, we want to give a big shout out of thank you to our donors, many of our generous donors, including, of course, the very donuts that you guys are eating that are provided by our wonderful Lamar's Bakery here in Broomfield. So if you got a chance, of course, please be a patron of their bakery. Also, Veterans Life Magazine, James and Mindy Daigle. We have a great relationship with them. We have lots of copies of their excellent publication, and I encourage you to pick up a couple of these. They are free. They are lying around the museum. Great stories, all kinds of things in there that I think you will find of interest, whether you're a veteran or not. Our exhibits, some of you may be aware that this is the 150th anniversary of Colorado's statehood, as well as, of course, our nation's birthday. So upstairs we have the American Revolution, 250 years, and celebrate Colorado's 150th birthday. We kind of put those together. And our very own Flint Whitlock is the genius who created our traveling display up there. If you have been up there, you may have noticed that we have a wonderful collection of tiny little miniature toy soldiers from the Revolutionary War. Yes, and they were put together by a gentleman by the name of John Carter. He has them hand-painted, every regiment, every unit, organization that fought in the Revolutionary War. So I definitely encourage you to take a look at those. Marvelous eye candy, yes. We also have, as some of you know, our artillery exhibit up there. We have some paintings and sketches from artists from World War II. A variety of upcoming events. First off, I'd like to let you know about our very own Bob Bird back there. Bob, raise your hand. Bob is going to be giving a lecture on the security that was set up for the stealth fighter, the F-117 program. He gave a talk to the museum I think about a month ago. But he will be giving this talk at the Thornton Active Adult Center on Thursday, May 21st, 1 p.m., if you are interested in that. And or you could tell us, but you have to kill us, right? Yeah. Yep. But Bob is a great source of information for the stealth program. And again, that's Thursday, May 21st, if you're interested, at the Thornton Active Adult Center. And if you do want to get that, again, confirmed, you can speak with Bob afterwards, I'm sure. We also have an upcoming event, May 16th to 17th. The Broomfield Veterans Museum will have a table at the Colorado Gun Collectors 60th anniversary show in Greeley. We are also, if any of you are museum members, we are looking for volunteers to staff those tables. It's a real easy job. But we have you talk to Tom Scholl. Tom, if you raise your hand right there, he's in charge of our outreach team, and he can get you assigned on one of those days. I believe Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, correct, Tom?
Friday to Sunday. Friday is VIP day.
Okay. And that is May 16th through the 17th. But it sounds like a great thing, especially those of you who are interested in firearms. Free admission, right, if you're working the table. Yeah, so you can't beat that, because I know sometimes those things, admission can be kind of costly. Yeah.
They said they're gonna allow 4,000 people for that event.
Excellent, excellent. So if you are interested in helping Tom out, please make sure you connect with Tom after the talk. May 25th, Memorial Day. Of course, those of you who've joined us in the past for Memorial Day, you know we put on a nice program, lovely program here at the museum. Broomfield County and City helps us over at the County Commons Park. There'll be a choral group there, I believe, speakers, and that will start at about 11 a.m. and finish up 1 p.m. June 11th, we have a very special, first time we've done something like this. It's called Veterans Night at the Museum, and it is, let's say, an open house for the museum we're putting on in the evening, because we realize there are so many people that are unable to see our wonderful facility during the daytime. So we are opening up the museum from 6 to 9 p.m. We will have snacks, drinks. We even have alcoholic beverages, adult beverages. So encourage you to come. That's always a big draw. June 13th, we will have our traditional flag retirement day. Of course, we get donations of old flags. We will be retiring those and destroying them in the proper way. We have a Girl Scout troop who will be helping us out with that. So I encourage you to come help us out June 13th as well. Reminders for the talk here, if you would make sure you signed into our visitors log. I know we may have a lot of people here who have never been to the museum before. We have a sign-in downstairs. We have a sign-in upstairs. So if you can hit those, even if you didn't get a chance on your way in, on your way out. Please silence your cell phone. That's always a courtesy to our speaker. We encourage you to become a museum member. Speak to anybody in a red or blue vest. We can get you signed up. We could also accept any donations you're interested in. And we're also always looking for volunteers, so let us know. Remember that you do not have to be a veteran to volunteer for the museum.
Dan, is all of that previous information, all that information there on the website?
His question was all the information on the website? I think the majority of it is, yes. There's been some that has kind of come up last minute. Our speakers coming up, upcoming coffee and conversation, our very own John Nahodl. I think I pronounced that correctly, right, John? Okay. John is right here, and he will be doing a talk on May 9th about his experience, especially in the Navy, with the distant early warning, the DEW line during the Cold War, correct? Yeah. So definitely encourage you to come hear John's talk. Flint Whitlock will be speaking May 23rd about his book, If Chaos Reigns, which is about the airborne operations during D-Day. And of course, many of you know Flint has got quite the pedigree in World War II. On June 13th, we have Aaron Mock, who served as an explosives ordnance disposal crew in Afghanistan. He had all kinds of other assignments during his military career. He'll be sharing those with us. Folks, right now I have a special speaker who is going to be coming June 20th. I don't have it on here yet, but we will be updating it because it sort of happened at the last minute. And this is a young man who used to volunteer here at the museum. Some of you may know him, Gabriel Rueda. And he is at West Point right now. He has a limited window of time to come visit us here in Colorado and give a talk on June 20th. So we will have a third coffee and conversation in June. And I'll get that information posted as soon as we have that update. June 27th, John Steinley. Some of you know him. He is quite the Colorado historian. He will be talking about the life and times of General John P. Slow. We're going to have an exhibit. It's going to go up in June around that time of Slow's frock coat that he wore in the Civil War and his hat. And we are going to be redoing our entire Colorado in the Civil War exhibit. So that should be something to see. I encourage you to be there for that. One last thing I'd like to remind folks, and I didn't do the last couple of coffee and conversations, we are looking for feedback here at the museum. So I have these forms in here, and I would encourage you, if you want to fill them out anonymously or if you want to put your name on them or whatever, but to give us a little bit of feedback about our program here. And also to let us know what you would like to see more of as far as speakers. If there's a particular area of interest, if you're interested in hearing veteran stories, if you're interested in hearing more history, if you're interested in hearing local history, what have you. We can definitely accommodate you. We just kind of need to know what your preferences are. So in here, I've got some of these forms. If you have a chance on your way out today, fill them out, drop them back in the box here, and we will take that under consideration for sure. All righty, with that, I think that it is time to hand this over to our speaker, Fred Martin. Some of you know Fred. Fred is quite the expert on the history of various aviation subjects, including his own father, who spent time as a B-17 crew member, right? Yep, yeah, and of course flying the hump. Some of you may be familiar with Fred's extensive research that he's done and the book that he has written about the hump, flying the hump, which was a great idea to dig into because there's so little history, I think, that has been published prior to the work you did on that subject. So it's really one of those subjects you don't hear a lot about in World War II, but it was a very important and crucial aspect of World War II. But today he's going to be telling us about a local resident here by the name of Elmer Lucky McGinty. And I suppose you're going to tell us how he got his nickname too, right? Yes, yes, yes. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Fred here. And if you guys will give a hand for Fred Martin here.
If we can make this work, great privilege to be here. Thank you. A couple preliminaries, if I may, a few. I'll be brief. This computer died last night, so I got my fingers crossed, and I have a flash drive, worst case scenario. I'm always on the lookout for the next project. This is my hobby, and it's just a blessing to be able to tell these stories. So if you think your family might have a story, or you might, hi Mary, have a story, I have a website, fredtmartin.com. First thing you'll see is I Want Your Story. It's a 6-minute video. If that appeals to you, give me a call. We could meet over coffee or an adult beverage and discuss the project. No cost for doing that. Then the other thing we do is, if you scroll down on the website, love offering presentations to veteran groups, civic groups, schools, churches, charities, wherever 2 or 3 are gathered, as a great man once said. And you could go down and click on my YouTube channel and see videos of some of those programs that are available. So just call, we'll schedule. I say we because I work with Lou Roman somewhere. Lou manages the Speakers Bureau for the museum, so it's a lot of others besides just me. Before I get to the recorded piece, I realized 2 nights ago I left out the slide on what is a waist gunner. And it looks to me like everybody here would know what a waist gunner is. It's not somebody fast on the draw. So I put the slide back in just to define that. The B-17 bristled with defensive machine guns. And there was one in the nose, and some models, the Bombardier up there had his own gun. The aircraft engineer would occupy the top turret in combat. You had a belly turret. That was the least enviable position on the aircraft. There was a tail gunner. They called him the Stinger. But back along the side of the fuselage, at the waist of the airplane, were 2 gunners, 1 on each side. So those are waist waist gunners. And while I'm doing this, maybe you'd permit me just a couple personal notes that occurred to me the other night. I'm a non-veteran that does these talks about heroic veteran and aviator warriors, and I'm afraid that I would come across as being gaga about the machines and the gunnery and the airplanes. The topic of aerial bombardment, whether it was then or now, people in the airplane, people on the ground, people on both sides of the conflict, it's a topic that I think should be approached with reverence. This is a picture of my dad. In 1984, I think we were at the Commemorative Air Force Museum in Texas, and there we are with a B-17 and a B-29. He was a command pilot on both types. I asked him, Dad, sum up your feelings about the tour? And his remark was, a bunch of grown kids playing with toys. And so I don't want to sound like I'm talking about these airplanes as if they were old Corvettes or Pontiac GTOs in a car show. And I kind of get that sense too much when I tour airplane museums. Not enough reverence. We went into a hangar, and he asked to be wheeled over next to the airplane, which he's in a wheelchair, and give him a few minutes. So I stepped back, and he ran his hand along the belly of the airplane, and then I could tell he broke out sobbing. There's a common theme. I'm sure some of you will relate. Dad never told stories about the war. Grandpa never told stories about the war. It's kind of, for families and researchers, it's a sacred silence. There's a gold mine there that's just complex layers of unexcavated memory. So it's amazing to do these stories. I'm often afraid that being a non-veteran, I'm going to make comments about the experience or the psychology of the experience that could be offensive emotionally or maybe politically. I don't intend for it to be that way. Because the PowerPoint is a little too complex for me to recite the narrative, I actually have pre-recorded it. So if we're ready, I'll click go. It's 38 minutes. Okay?
I have a story to tell about a World War II B-17 waist gunner. Like many students of World War II history, I am caught up in the lore of the B-17 bomber. My interest started because my dad was a B-17 pilot in the Air Transport Command. He then flew 66 missions over the Himalayan hump in B-24 derivatives. My books about him got Dad inducted into the Kansas Governor's Aviation Hall of Fame 25 years after he passed. When I was a young lad, my mother took me to the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum in Washington. Then I had only a vague notion that my father had flown the B-17 in World War II, yet I was enthralled by this giant mural there. The B-17's role in the war made it an iconic symbol of burgeoning American power in the world and the promise of triumph over the Axis forces. My mother said the B-17 was the most beautiful man-made object she'd ever seen. Maybe that revealed a charming romantic notion in the heart of a young woman toward one of the airplane's pilots of her acquaintance. This is the cover art from Broomfield, Colorado author Adam Makos's book, A Higher Call. It's one of the finest books on World War II aviation I've ever read. Adam spoke at the Veterans Museum World War II Symposium in 2022 at the Broomfield Auditorium. The story of this Luftwaffe pilot escorting this crippled B-17 to safety over the Channel, despite knowing he would be executed if found out by Nazi command, well, it'll make you shed a tear. The two pilots became close friends after the war.
The B-17's ability to absorb intensive damage in combat, keep flying, and bring its crew home was legendary. The magnitude of human sacrifice and ultimate victory that it brought to the war made this one of the most romanticized airplanes in history. Few other aircraft types can be associated with so much human drama. I do a presentation with author-collaborator Mike Martin, no relation that we know about, entitled April Girl, a biography of a World War II B-17 and Colorado heroes who served on B-17s. In the past 2 years, I've interviewed 5 100-plus-year-old World War II veterans, including several B-17 crewmen. In the April Girl story, they are Dad, a B-17 pilot, Mike Klein, a B-17 tail gunner who was a friend of the Veterans Museum. His talk is at the museum YouTube channel. Mike advised me on my book. Liesel, a Broomfield resident, she gives the perspective from the ground. Her father was killed during a B-17 raid, rushing her to a bomb shelter. Bill Roche, a much-loved volunteer at the National Museum of World War II Aviation, he was a B-17 waist gunner. Author Mike's dad, Harold Martin, B-17 engineer and top turret gunner, didn't meet with him but worked with his son. And the star of today's presentation, Elmer Lucky McGinty, B-17 waist gunner. You can see the 50-minute April Girl presentation at the YouTube channel of the National Museum of World War II Aviation or at my own YouTube channel. I found out about Lucky from these news articles, and I called his daughter Diane to let me meet him. I wanted to add Lucky to my cast of heroes. There was a lot in the news about his 100th birthday, so right after, I got to meet Lucky. Now, Diane says this photo does not capture his quick wit and charming demeanor, yet you can see that my own bubbly personality shines right through in this photo. We planned an event for him in Longmont. Congressman Negus and the mayor of Longmont had planned to join us. Then, Lucky passed away a week earlier. It took us a couple months to reschedule at the Broomfield Grange. Lucky's family was in from all over the U.S. for his ceremony at Fort Logan. It was quite an honor to give this presentation for them. In telling Lucky's story, in tribute to him, I want to look at service in B-17s. What was it like? What did they do on a day-to-day basis? I try to give a visceral sense of what Lucky and thousands of others experienced in missions over Europe in 8th Air Force B-17 bombers. These men, just boys at the time, endured a lifetime of challenge and trauma in that 1 year or so of deployment. Most were barely emerged from adolescence. Many would never return. Lucky enlisted at age 17 in January 1941. That was 11 months before Pearl Harbor. His first posting, Lowry Field, Denver, skipping basic training due to an Army oversight. In AT-6 ground crews, eventually attending gunnery school for A-20s, then to the heavies, the B-17s. My dad ferried factory-fresh B-17s from Salina, Kansas to Europe. I have to ponder whether he flew any of the airplanes that Lucky and others in the April Girl story served in. It is quite possible. Against regulations, Dad took crews home to my parents' Wilmington, Delaware apartment where Mother would prepare the last home-cooked meal many would ever have. By this point in the war, of the men and women Dad had for dinner in their small apartment, it is probable that 1 in 5 to 1 in 4 were killed in their B-17s. Dad told of his dismay at having to teach aircraft fundamentals to these crews headed to combat over Europe. He said they didn't even know how to use the throat mics. Microphones in the B-17 were worn around the neck and worked through throat vibrations to keep the mouth open for talking or shouting in the cabin and to allow the wearing of an oxygen mask. Many of these young crewmen tried to hold the microphone by hand and talk directly into it. In the rush to war, training of the massed numbers of new airmen was less than comprehensive. These young men had already run a frightful gauntlet to get this far. The Army Air Forces lost over 15,000 aircrew in training accidents alone in World War II, compared to 26,000 bomber combat losses over Europe. Here's a picture of gunners in training and then what they did in actual combat. It's quite a big difference. The guy in training standing on a soapbox is using a smaller field weapon. The worst threat to his life is that training sergeant. But over Europe at 20,000 feet and 30 degrees below zero, the 50 caliber machine gun in the B-17 could fire 800 rounds per minute, but it would jam from the heat if you fired for more than 50 seconds. Notice how this waist gunner is standing ankle deep in spent shells. Now, to lend some understanding of the immense unified national effort that went into B-17 operations, let's take a 1.5 minute visit to the Boeing Military Airplane Company B-17 factory in Seattle. Note that even the popular music of the day was totally focused on America's united war effort.
All the day long, where the rain or shine, she's a part of the assembly line. She's making history, working for victory. Rosie, the riveter, keeps a sharp lookout for sabotage. Sitting up there on the fuselage, that little Fred can do more than a man can do. Rosie, the riveter, Rosie's got a boyfriend, Charlie. Charlie, he's a Marine. Rosie is protecting Charlie, working overtime on the riveting machine.
April Girl likely was born in the Seattle factory of the Boeing Military Airplane Company. B-17s rolled off assembly lines like automobiles. The Seattle plant reached a production level of up to 16 per day. Many more were built elsewhere. In all, 12,731 B-17s were built. That production level eclipsed modern aircraft manufacturing volumes. The United States produced over 300,000 aircraft in World War II of all types. Production outpaced the availability of pilots. The logistics of just delivering this many aircraft to the theaters of war challenges credulity. It took nearly 500,000 men and women to crew B-17s during World War II. In combat over Europe, nearly 26,000 Americans died in them. Lucky traveled to war aboard the Queen Elizabeth, the largest troop ship in World War II. The names of these great canard queens evoke the finest luxury on the seas, but in World War II, not so much. She carried over 15,000 Americans on each voyage, but at 28 knots, she could not outrun German U-boats. My dad returned to New York on the Queen Mary after a B-17 delivery. He took this photo of her at the Southampton docks. The Elizabeth carried over 750,000 American servicemen to Europe, likewise her sister ship, Queen Mary. Because of this, history records that Hitler had one of his obsessions about sinking the Queens. He offered a $250,000 reward for any U-boat captain and crew who sank the Queen Mary. It's safe to assume the offer held for the Elizabeth. I Googled the value of money equation. That's $4,350,000 in today's dollars. So who today wants to book a stateroom on QE2 for a cruise to Europe if you knew dozens of submarines were prowling your route, competing for a $4.3 million prize for killing you? As soon as the new crews arrived at their English air bases, they received orientation briefings. The following account from Harold Martin is in Mike Martin's book, Steel Fortress. This is typical of the briefing Lucky and all aircrew heard upon arrival. They were told, "Gentlemen, you are virtually unprepared for combat, in spite of your stateside training. Truth is, despite the readiness training you will receive here, half of you will not finish your 25-mission tour of duty. You have been told of the combat efficiency of the B-17. That is simply not true, and you have been misled. So my advice to you is to not think too much. Just take it one day at a time and do your job well. You may make it out of here alive." The men were stunned. No one saw this coming. They learned about surviving the below-zero temperatures and 170-mile-per-hour winds that ripped through open portals in the plane. Freezing was a deadly problem. Oxygen masks froze at high altitude, killing crews regularly. The low pressure at altitude caused headache, nausea, and poor coordination. Exertion caused cramping and fluid in the lungs and brain, resulting in death. They were briefed that if parachuted behind German lines, outraged citizens had started lynching American flyers or clubbing them to death. If they fought back, the Gestapo would execute them.
At 30,000 feet, the crews of the unpressurized B-17s operated in extreme conditions. Encumbered by bulky clothing, engaging an enemy fighter was no easy task.
It's 55 below zero up there, and even though we had heaters in the cockpit, the poor gunners back in the rear, they had no heat. And even though they wore heated suits, some of them, and wore a lot of clothing, it was still very cold back there, and frostbite was a problem for them.
Biggest thing, people don't realize, people sweat at 45 degrees below zero. You sit there sweating. Maybe it was fair sweat, I don't know. Each crewed by 10 men, thousands of them would fly the most perilous missions of the Second World War. Many would never return.
And so missions began in earnest as a relentless daily routine set in, and the men became familiar with the realities of B-17 missions. It was out of bunks by 5 a.m. or earlier, to the mess hall for eggs and bacon, then to the mission briefing. Here the boys would learn of the target for the day. Often groans would rise in the room. Not Berlin again. They had barely survived prior missions. Imagine the stress of living this way, of wondering if you would be among the possible 30%, that this is the day you would die. You fly a mission for 6 hours, 8, 10, or more in the freezing high-altitude conditions and return from the mission exhausted beyond belief.
Drive across the landing ground in a jeep, and there awaiting them are the giant 4-engine bombers which have a date with a certain factory. The occupant of the Stinger or tail gun takes his place. The penthouse turret gunner and the 2 trigger men in the waist of the fortress also make themselves at home.
Still, you must write up your mission report. Here is one of Lucky's gunnery reports. Then, after this kind of harrowing workday, you can go to the mess hall. Maybe a few beers, though Lucky didn't drink, perhaps a key to his longevity. Then you try somehow to wind down and get some sleep. Next morning, it starts all over again. Lucky lived the story portrayed in the Tom Hanks series, Masters of the Air. Now, I'm a B-17 nerd, and I can notice the difference between a B-17F and a G model. This series does a meticulous job of getting the technical details correct. Lucky flew from that same Thorpe Abbotts airfield at the same time this series portrays. Here is another painting of Thorpe Abbotts that I and many have used on Christmas cards. It evokes a cold, quiet moment, Christmas 1943. I imagine the men around a wood stove, singing carols and decorating a meager tree. They were optimistic because fleets of new 17s and fresh crews were arriving, boosting the force. But for many, this would be their last Christmas. The worst was yet to come in the spring.
The 100th Bombardment Group was recently depicted in Apple TV's hit series Masters of the Air, from the executive producers of Band of Brothers in the Pacific.
The 8th we sent in up the largest air armada ever assembled in the history of mankind.
Straight into Hitler's territory. Here in East Anglia, Station 139, as it was officially designated by the 8th Air Force, Thorpe Abbotts Airfield was one of over 40 heavy bomber bases used by the mighty 8th for their bombing raids on targets throughout Nazi-occupied Europe. Similar to other Allied bomber bases throughout England, Thorpe Abbotts covered an area of 500 acres, had 3 runways, including one of the longest in England, and up to 50 hard stands, parking places for B-17s when they weren't out flying on missions. In just under 2 2 years, Bomb Group flew 306 missions, including 8,630 sorties. And during that time, they dropped over 19,000 tons of bombs. The impact the 100th Bombardment Group, and many other bomb groups like it, had on the overall effort to win the war cannot be overstated. Fully aware that their chances of survival were minimal, these air crews continued to take the fight to the enemy against all odds and faced death day after day.
In the book Steel Fortress, Harold Martin said that from the first mission, the stress of fatigue and terror were beyond anything training had prepared the crew for. By 1944, when Lucky was in theater, operations had become a war of attrition. The invincible flying fortresses they had trained on at home were now being deployed as bait for German fighters, so American fighters could pursue and follow to their bases. Command was prepared to lose 2/3 of the bombers. That's 7,000 men. Having your command sending you to the slaughter like that is part of a warrior's traumatic duty in war. In April alone, 537 bombers and 191 American fighter planes were lost. That's close to 5,500 men. The calculation was that the Germans would lose more faster. Now, history narratives and news casualty reports cavalierly toss out such simple statistics on human life, but 537 is just a number. I had the privilege of giving the April Girl presentation at the National Museum of World War II Aviation in Colorado Springs on Veterans Day. In tribute to these lost heroes, we had a couple moments of silence to look at that number graphically. That's just the B-17s lost in the month of April during Lucky's tour, plus 191 fighter aircraft. Those are the 8th Air Force losses in men and airplanes in just April 1944. Rookies were advised to get lucky. If you're hit, get out quick. You only have 30 seconds. And here's a little clue on how to fight this war. Pretend you're dead already. The rest comes easy. And the much touted precision bombing capabilities, the claim that the Norden bomb site could drop a bomb in a pickle barrel from 20,000 feet, that was becoming a crapshoot. Targets had to be hit multiple times to inflict significant damage. With fighter escorts pursuing enemy fighters, the B-17s became target practice for the enemy. And precision bombing tactics against military targets gave way to area bombing. That was a euphemistic term for non-precision targeting of civilian populations such as Dresden. Now that raises a sensitive issue for historians about what our veterans are asked to bear in their hearts and souls. In addition to the daily trauma of self-survival, these men knew what was happening 20,000 feet below. I once had the very great privilege of meeting Paul Tibbets. Shaking his hand, he signed his book for me. He was the pilot of the most famous and perhaps important aerial bombing mission in all of human history. He reflects poignantly that his mission killed thousands of civilians, yet by all calculations, it saved up to 1 million American lives that would have been lost in an invasion of Japan. That's a moral calculation that all of us who enjoy life in this free democracy are responsible for, whether we do the fighting or not. So on top of the risk of combat itself, this is an enormous burden that we ask our combat veterans to bear in their service to our nation. To that point, one of the main protagonists in my April Girl presentation is Liesel. She was my business client in the 1990s in Broomfield. In her childhood in Germany, she had been a Hitler Youth. By the late 30s, this was mandatory for Aryan children, one of history's most frightening mass indoctrination programs conforming the collective consciousness of literally millions of children to the bigoted hate of one man. A study of the Hitler Youth and other Nazi social engineering programs is key to explaining the Holocaust. Liesel had once presented flowers and a box of candy to Hermann Göring, who was, somewhat ironically, the commander of the Luftwaffe defending German skies against the B-17s. She would cringe and shake as she described to me the B-17 raids of her childhood, of hearing this fearsome sound slowly build in the air long before the bombers appeared from over the horizon, signaling her family to flee for the shelters. She told of how the bombers approached in massed formations, dimming the sun, filling the sky, just before releasing their terrible destruction upon her world. Her father was killed, rushing her to the shelters. When I knew her, Liesel had some real emotional scars, and yet she had become fully American, along with many former World War II Germans and Japanese. A common experience for all crews was listening to radio stations in range over enemy territory that would play American hits to get the crews to listen. Flying over the hump, my father listened to Japanese broadcasts that featured Tokyo Rose. Harold Martin told of starting a mission after crossing the channel. They passed 10,000 feet, donned oxygen, and settled in for a long flight at 30 degrees below zero. They were listening to Jean Krupa on a German radio station when a sultry female voice came on. "Hello, you B-17 boys. Are there any of you left? We haven't forgotten about you Luftgangster baby killers. We know you're coming to our beloved homeland today. See you soon. Enjoy the next song. It will be your last." Now, here is the list of Lucky's 29 missions. Of special note is this period, February 20 to 25. The Army Air Corps and RAF conducted an all-out campaign against Germany's aviation industry and the Luftwaffe. Heavy bombers from the 8th and 15th Air Forces hammered aircraft engine and ball bearing plants by day, and RAF bombers attacked by night. Codenamed Operation Argument, it became known as the Big Week. Big Week has been chronicled as one of the most significant battles in world history. By this time, Army Air Corps fighters had the range to escort the bombers all the way to their targets, causing havoc with the Luftwaffe defenders. The operation combined 8th and 15th Air Forces flying nearly 4,000 heavy bomber sorties and dropped more than 20 million pounds of bombs on industrial and military targets during Big Week. The Army Air Corps lost nearly 250 heavy bombers with about 2,600 casualties. But Big Week operations cost the Luftwaffe a third of its available fighter aircraft, and a fifth of the Luftwaffe's irreplaceable veteran fighter pilots were killed. Those 5 days changed the face of the war, achieving air superiority, allowing the invasion of Europe to proceed. Lucky's mission to Regensburg is especially notable in history. The aircraft plants there had been under heavy bombardment since the famous high-loss raids of 1943, and this target was heavily defended. Flak was intense. Lucky may not have talked about it much in subsequent years, but history documents what he saw firsthand on these missions. This is German gun camera footage from that mission. Lucky's waist gun position had the widest view out the aircraft of this battlefield in the sky. Gunners would try to stay focused on incoming enemy fighters while craning to see if parachutes were appearing from the falling B-17s around them.
Rider 6ME-109 at 3 o'clock. Keep after him, would you? I see him. I'm on him. Come on, you. I see him at 2 o'clock. Watch him, Scotty. I got my sights on him. Check that B-17, Chuck. 3 o'clock. Motor smoking. Fighters, 10 o'clock. B-17.
On March 6, Lucky shot down a Messerschmitt 109 over Berlin. You might say he dropped it right on Hitler's head. American bombers were hitting the headquarters of the German Reich for the first time. Hitler knew he was in the bullseye. The best of the Luftwaffe pilots were stationed there. Lucky's ship that day was our gal Sal, and was the last survivor that day in the flight group. She was alone in the sky when two Me-109s attacked to take her down. A Facebook post of the 100th Bomb Group mentions Lucky. It says, Lucky McGinty 336 waist gunner downed a German fighter which targeted our ship. Lucky told of watching helplessly as so very many of the guys from the 100th were being shot down over Berlin on March 6, 1944. But as one of your guys was trying to catch up with us, I was finally able to help him. The memory was so clear it was as if it had happened yesterday. I asked Lucky which mission impacted him the most or worst. It was Augsburg, March 16th in I Do'd It. The nose of the airplane was shot off. Oxygen supplies were cut off. It was 50 to 60 degrees below zero. The bombardier in that position survived, but only after his crewmates rescued him, badly injured from the 200-mile-per-hour wind blast. The aircraft was repaired and returned to service, renamed Berlin Bessie. But on October 8, Bessie was hit by flak. The pilot gave the bailout order, the crew left. Then the pilot and co-pilot regained control and returned to base, leaving 7 POWs with the enemy. Lucky flew 5 missions during that terrible month of April 1944 that we mentioned a few moments ago with the graphic moments of silence. And as a complete side note, on April 10th, Lucky was on a mission to Reims, home of some of the world's finest champagne, and where my dad got my brother a job 24 years later, working in a Cessna airplane factory. Now, one more run through of this mission list to show how lucky actually was. On this December 31 mission, he flew on heavenly days to Paris. 11 days later, she was shot down, killing 9 POWs. His next mission, January 4th, was on Cuddlecat to this German target. The next day, that B-17 was shot down with 1 killed, 7 POWs. The next mission on January 24 was in a B-17 that was shot down March 6. On the same mission, Lucky shot down the Messerschmitt, saving his own airplane. 1 killed, 9 POWs. The very next trip to Frankfurt, January 29, that bomber later crash-landed during that March 6 mission, 10 POWs. His aircraft on the February 3rd mission also went down on March 6, 1 dead, 9 POWs. His B-17 on the February 6th mission went down March 16th, 10 POWs bailed out. Lucky received the Air Medal February 8th. The B-17 he was on February 21 to Brunswick was shot down also on March 6, 1 killed, 9 POWs. After his Regensburg mission, that aircraft was shot down April 11th. Pilot killed, 9 POWs bailed out. February 29, Lucky received his first oak leaf cluster. The B-17 he flew on this March 6 flight to Berlin, same day that 3 of his previous airplanes were lost, and this is where Lucky shot down that Me-109. This plane was then lost 10 days later, 10 POWs. Is this account starting to get tedious? Well, we're just getting started. On March 16, Lucky was on I Do'd It to Augsburg, where the nose was blown off. That's the airplane that was repaired and renamed Berlin Bessie, but on a later mission was hit by flak with the crew bailing out. Lucky was awarded his second oak leaf cluster. On March 22, the mission to Berlin was aboard Liberty ship. That was an oddly prophetic name because she was later ditched in the sea, killing 2, 8 got back alive. Third oak leaf cluster for Lucky. His aircraft on the April 1st mission crashed just 10 days later with 2 engines on fire, killing 7, 3 POWs. The B-17 Lucky flew on April 27 to the town of Haag, lasted only another 16 days when it exploded. 8 killed, 2 POWs. Lucky gets his 4th and 5th oak leaf cluster. His final mission to Berlin, May 8th, was aboard Knockout Baby. That airplane survived. Lucky was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross the next day. Knockout Baby was ferried back to the U.S. to be destroyed in a scrapyard with thousands of her siblings. In the 1980s, it was estimated that 50% of aluminum beverage cans once flew as World War II aircraft. Now, Lucky would want a correction to the record inserted here. His nickname actually came from an altercation with a second lieutenant who had previously busted him down to private for some minor infraction. He was called in again. The guy threatened to bust him down again. Lucky told him he'd already done that and he was already a private. Then the lieutenant grabbed his hair and yelled about getting a haircut. Lucky said, "Boom, I hit him." Of course, that caused a terrible uproar. A captain told him he could avoid court-martial by scrubbing the office floor every day for a week. "That's how I got out of that," Lucky said. The nickname luckily stuck. Lucky also received the Legion of Honor from the nation of France. This is the highest honor awarded by France. It actually bestows knighthood on the recipient, so Lucky is a knight of France. And he received this remarkable letter from Prince Harry and Duchess Meghan. "You are forever one of the nation's beloved heroes." I assume they mean the British nation. Operation Overlord came 27 days after Lucky's last mission, the largest military invasion in world history. As I studied his last several mission targets, it seems obvious that Lucky was involved in the preparations. April 10, Reims. April 20, Cherbourg. April 22nd, Saint-Honoré. April 27th, Hague. May 1st, Sagré-Ménard. These targets were rail lines, bridges, and marshalling yards on supply lines to northern France from Germany. In working on history and biographies of my parents and other heroes in World War II, it's really fun and rewarding to discover their larger roles on the stage of world history that they themselves were not fully aware of at the time. The planning for the Normandy invasion was top secret. Few knew of the roles they were playing. How much worse would those thousands of losses on the beaches have been without these and many other preparatory missions? Lucky remained in service after his missions were completed, becoming a gunnery instructor. The war was far from over. No one could rest on their laurels. Around the world that summer of '44, news was disheartening, the eventual fate of the free world uncertain. There would be another year before Germany was defeated. The Japanese were still advancing in China. The Marines and Army still faced the brutal island-hopping march across the Pacific to an eventual invasion of Japan that would certainly cost hundreds of thousands of lives. My own dad was flying daily 10-hour missions over the Himalayas, delivering gasoline to China. The Manhattan Project was advancing, but in a very close race with German scientists who were thought to be in the lead to give Hitler the atomic bomb. And on the domestic front, bombing of the American homeland seemed imminent. Everyone's daily life was impacted by rationing and tremendous uncertainty. For warriors like Lucky and everyone back home, there was no time for rest, and the hope for victory was still in the unknowable, indefinite future. It's rewarding to work with veteran aviators like McGinty because he kept history alive. Yeah, I meet many families. They recall snippets of stories once told by parents or grandparents. They may have some old photos, yet too often those were lost in a move, or maybe my brother has them somewhere. Too often the story is lost. Lucky's home in Longmont was replete with records and mementos. He was a director on the Greatest Generation Foundation, and he remained active in the 8th Air Force Historical Society and the 95th Bomb Group organization. He gave a number of interviews over the years and remained active in keeping history alive. But what lessons come from this history? Are we doing more in these studies than just indulging in reminiscence and nostalgia? From the study of that time, I believe that World War II was a pinnacle of American civilization because our nation and allies were so united in common cause and in such close agreement on principles of honor, integrity, and duty that America saved the world. Thousands of men and women like Lucky and my own dad saved the world from a global fascist threat in under 5 years. I have tried to give us a feel for the desperate day-to-day struggle and valor that was required on the part of hundreds of thousands of Americans and allies. McGinty's story exemplifies that it took every ounce of unified courage to win World War II. So national unity characterized the World War II era and made victory possible. Another lesson that derives from this history, we had heroic leadership in World War II. The young men and women who were sent to war and their parents and families had little doubt of the personal morality, integrity, and virtuous motives of their military commanders. Our political leadership back then was focused on unifying Americans, and confidence in them was highly unified. And this is the fellow and his wife who dedicated the original Broomfield Library, which became the Veterans Museum. When you study these heroes of World War II, you see adolescent kids who had to quickly become wise, unified, and devoted to America because it fell to them to save the world. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I just urge that everybody send this to their network so that they can hear it too. And I hope this gets into a printed version so that for those who, I don't know, can't see it visually, can read it and it can get even further. Because I wish this was in every grade school up to, college graduation.
Thank you. It will be posted at the Veterans Museum YouTube, and it's already at my YouTube, which you can access at my website.
In Lucky's flying, was he with the same crew, or did the crew members change as he changed airplanes?
See, that's an interesting question, because in Steel Fortress, when I do the April Girl thing, that crew was assigned the airplane, and it was, it's very interesting there about that airplane. In Lucky's case, it was a different airplane for every mission.
Yeah.
Now, I don't, and that's why so many were destroyed out from under right
Yeah.
after he used them. And I don't know about the crews, whether the crews were mixed up. I don't know the answer.
And this airplane has a turret on the nose. Is that a later model?
That's a Model G with
Okay.
a chin turret. The last greatest.
I have a question about the plane, Our Gal Sal. The pictures there show a bunch of bombs up the top, which I figure is mission, but it also has 2 swastikas on it. Do you know why?
No. No.
Could they have been kill marks or bomb mission marks?
Well, there are bombs and swastikas.
There's 2 the bombs are all up top,
Uh-huh.
the swastikas are down below.
I think the swastikas denoted fighter aircraft.
Okay, that could be fighters shot down. Thank you. It's amazing what you can find on the internet. That's where I found out Our Gal Sal. Bill Bacon gave me a book on B-17s that lists them by serial number, and it doesn't list them all. So it doesn't get into 1944, but I thank you for that book. I sure wish I could equate my dad's delivery missions to combat, but serial numbers in pilot logbooks were not allowed.
What, was he flying a B-24?
Over the hump?
Yeah.
Yeah, derivative. Well, B-24s, derivatives were C-87s and C-109s,
Okay.
same airframe.
So that's how come that became a hauling gas.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were no B-17s. There were B-29s over the hump, of course.
Question over.
Was the Model G the offset race gunners?
Yes, you guys. It's not that I know all this stuff. Yeah, but in the earlier models, the waist gunners were bumping into each other. So in the G model, they separated the windows on each side of the airplane. That's a fun detail.
I just want to comment, thanks very much for putting such a presentation together.
Oh.
I did a presentation here before about 2 years ago, but I know what amount of work put into that. And also, I just want to comment, if anybody has the ability to get on a B-17 and fly it, definitely do it. I was on 909 back in the late 1990s. It was way beyond my experience, or my expectations. So if you have a chance of flying a B-17, definitely do it.
Isn't there, did he have to fly with his older brother in the same airplane?
McGinty?
Yeah, Hugh McGinty.
I didn't know about that.
He's 2 years older.
Huh. Oh, there is somewhere in the record how they enlisted together. And it's fuzzy in my memory. Diane, his daughter, was going to be here today. She didn't show up. She knows all that. She lives in Longmont.
Is there any way to describe, or how successful were the gunners on B-17 in shooting down the attacking plane? Was it rare? Was it?
I don't know. Go ahead.
I have heard that the airplane that shot down most BF-109s at Buckles was the B-17 waist gunners.
Okay.
That should be, I read it somewhere. I don't know if it's true, but you could probably Google it somewhere.
Someone described attacking a B-17 as trying to make love to a porcupine.
Ma'am.
Of the pilots that became POWs, what was the survival rate? Have you ever been aware of that?
That's addressed in that Tom Hanks series. They become, but again, the statistics you guys are asking, I'm not sure. I believe our pilots were treated fairly well because they were afraid of how we would treat their POWs. And of course, we sent a lot of German POWs to Canada where they were treated with almost luxury.
2 questions. How long did it take you to prepare this specific presentation? And could you tell us your association and your father's association with the Cessna aircraft?
Well, thanks. I got into all this because I wrote a book about my dad. I was on a fishing trip with him when I was a boy, and he never talked about the war. And all of a sudden, he broke down while we were hooking walleyes and started crying and talking about trying to rescue men at the air base in India. And so I'm sitting there, and I kind of, maybe someday I'll write your story. And so 10 years after he died, I set about doing that. That got him into the Kansas Governor's Aviation Hall of Fame. And then I thought, maybe I have something here. And the Veterans Museum, back in 2008, has given me the privilege of doing these talks. And so I build one presentation off the last. And
so for
it's
okay. And the association with Cessna.
It's funny, one of the guys he was flying with was a Cessna sales manager, and Dad wanted to return to Pennsylvania to sell airplanes, but this guy just come out to Wichita, and where's that? It's a dirt little Kansas town, and he went out and took the job. And he became, by the late 60s, the vice president of marketing of Cessna. Is that a question?
I'm familiar with the Lost Squadron. I'm with the Explorers Club in New York, and one of our members is documenting the 2 B-17s. They're perfectly good planes that landed in Greenland with 6 P-38 Lightnings.
Uh-huh.
And if you're not familiar, anyone can Google the Lost Squadron.
Yeah.
Fascinating story. I'll send you a note.
Thank you. I mean, we could go on at length with war stories, but yeah, there was a P-38 extracted from 1,000 feet in the ice, something like that. Yeah, amazing. And then I can't help but tell the story. They were delivering a PBY across Greenland in World War II, and it was complete whiteout conditions. And all the pilots noticed that the airspeed indicator started to decay, went down to 0, and they're checking all their other instruments. RPM looks fine, everything's fine. They had hit the ice so smoothly, they didn't even notice. And it took them a while to figure out, okay, maybe we ought to shut down the engines. And then it took them weeks to get rescued.
They flew Glacier Girl into Oshkosh, Wisconsin at EAA one time.
Mhm.
There was a plane they extracted from 268 feet, and they pulled it up, flew it to Georgia, and restored it, and it flies again.
Mhm.
About 70% original. Yeah, it's an amazing story.
I'm upset that the National Museum of World War II Aviation has just sold its P-38. That was a beauty, and it was rescued from a complete junker. Beautiful airplane, and they went and sold it.
To where?
I have to look that one up. They put it in their newsletter. I'm trying to work on a story. Some of you know him, Walt Barbeau. He's 103 years old now, and he flew P-38s in the South Pacific, and he sent me a video last month. He still flies his high-performance Cessna 210, and he showed me a video of a flyby out at Centennial. But he's so modest, we just keep bouncing off of each other on the interview. It's a great privilege to chat at you all. Thank you.
And I'd like to personally thank Fred also. Fred has given a couple of excellent talks here, and we hope that you will come back and give us some more. Thank you, Fred. It's good. Fred, and if you don't mind, if folks afterwards, if you have some individual questions, maybe come up and ask you about. And folks, don't forget.
One more quick announcement. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go right ahead.
You mentioned Veterans Life magazine. I did the Orson Swindle article last month's issue. I just got to interview Luther Bergeland. And so please pick this up. The article's on page 24.
We got copies here.
He came under serious fire in the Battle of the Bulge. He attended the Nuremberg trials. He became a chaplain in Korea, won the Bronze Star in the Battle of Kum Song, and then was a chaplain through the Vietnam era and a Lutheran pastor. It was a lot of, and he's 101 years old.
Wow. Excellent. Thank you, Fred. Just a reminder too, folks, feedback forms. If you are interested, please, we could use the feedback. Thank you very much. Thank you, Fred. Folks, have a great day. Thanks, Fred. Excellent. I love that presentation.